You, a mere judge, should be able to join a king and a deity. What an interesting question, Higuruma. What's up guys, Hunter here, and here we are to do a nice little discussion on whether or not Higuruma Hiromi, the judge of fate, can actually reach the level, the heights, the pinnacles of power that are achieved by the king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna, and Gojo Satoru, the strongest sorcerer of the modern day, and he who shifted the balance of the very world with his birth. We have a quite hefty chunk to talk about, so let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. What's up guys, that guy with a pencil here, and I have a little fun fact for you, and that fun fact is that I happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact on top of that previous fun fact is the fact that Higuruma Hiromi also tends to wait, I actually have something for this. He also tends to have it on him and keep it on him at all times. Of course, this is a bit smaller, and like, ironically enough, it turns into what I usually have and keep on me at all times. But the case of Higuruma Hiromi is a very interesting one. Now, admittedly, for the longest time, a lot of people definitely had Higuruma stocks on the low, considering what he was introduced to be able to do, considering the introduction of the Executioner's Sword, considering Higuruma's whole existence as a character, being put on the same level as Hajimekashimo as a target for our main casting crew, considering how much points he literally accrued over the course of his Culling Games run. Yeah. People may have been dibbling and dabbling in a few Higuruma stocks here or there. He may have been on the market, if you know what I'm talking about. And of course, people, when they see a nice new prospect on the market, people start to invest. The same thing happened with Hajimekashimo, who appeared to be one of, if not flat out, the mightiest. 200 beefy old points, fundamentally changing the nature of the Culling Games just like that, with his 40 separate executions. But of course, we already have the answer for Hajimekashimo and whether or not over the course of his entire original lifetime, and who knows how much time after his resurrection, about like 2 months, he clearly could not reach the level of the strongest, clearly could not reach the level of the mightiest, though admittedly he was knocking on heaven's door, per se. But of course, now that Hajimekashimo is gone and only one hyped Culling Game player remains, hyped by not just Kenjaku, but now even Sukuna himself, to have potential and talent rivaling even Satoru Gojo himself, the question now becomes, okay, so he's clearly got it, right? He has it on him, and he keeps it on him at all times. It's just natural. He has the potential. He has the statements about his potential. He has the statements about his potential from the most knowledgeable and powerful characters in the entire series. Knowledgeable being Sukuna and Kenjaku, and powerful being Sukuna and Kenjaku. The only one out of the many, who knows how many players that Kenjaku actively incarnated in the modern day. Only Higuruma is one that explicitly caught his attention, and upon witnessing Higuruma's consistent growth and evolution from his point that he interacted with Higuruma while he was sealed within Itadori, all the way up to his most recent interaction with him in 246, even Sukuna himself has laid the gauntlet down and admitted that Higuruma Hiromi is, in fact, Timothy, in terms of his raw potential. But of course, this naturally beckons the question. Considering Higuruma Hiromi is stated to be one with almost unrivaled, unparalleled potential, we've notably never actually heard someone compared strictly potential-wise to Satoru Gojo. Even a character who's clearly shown insane, next-level, buku bonkers amounts of potential, such as Yuta Okotsu, who leaped massively from a regular civilian with a curse attached to him to arguably the second, well, not arguably anymore, the second strongest, only to Satoru Gojo, and the second strongest special grade in the course of 1 year. We've seen people with insane potential. For Itadori Yuji, a man who was admittedly not a regular civilian, but a person with enhanced strength, going from a random civilian for the most part, up to a high grade 1, possibly by the point of the manga. Very high grade 1. Once again, we don't know enough about his technique yet, or like his scaling to really get him up to special grade, and considering, I mean, he could probably solo a nation. So maybe, possibly, Itadori Yuji going from random civilian to special grade in less than a year. You even have people who like Tojifushiguro who are highlighted for their extreme potential due to the nature of their very technique. The Ten Shadows technique, but out of all these different students, all these different young men, and even young women in the case of Maki, occasionally being acknowledged for having insane potential as well, none of them have been compared directly to Satoru Gojo, and this is for a reason. Of course, Satoru Gojo was different. I say was, because of course, He's currently on the ground right now, and I presume he's not going to return, and thusly he was different from the very moment he was born into the world. The natural balance of the world flipped upon its head with the introduction of Satoru Gojo. The Satoru Gojo balance patch completely altered the state of Jujutsu. It might as well have been the meteor that slammed and wiped out the dinosaurs because it started a whole new meta, simply with him being born. And that's why even characters like Yuta Akotsu, Itadori Yuji, Megumi Fushiguro, Hakari Kinji, all these different powerful people with great abilities of their own, or lack thereof in the case of Yuji so far, but maybe a new one in the case of blood manipulation, whatever his soul technique is, all of them have yet to be compared to Satoru Gojo. So the first character who is explicitly stated by the one person who actually got to experience the full power, ability, and talent of Satoru Gojo directly, Ryomen Sukuna, for him to slap the gauntlet on the table and say definitively that this man has talent that rivals even that deity. The question becomes, sure, right now, in this moment, in this instant in time, Higuruma is likely fighting the first major battle and likely final major battle of his life. Of course, you can argue his culling game battles were very, very important because they were also life or death, but I'd say realistically the battle against Sukuna is the most important battle he'll ever have in his life. Whether he lives or perishes, this is where he shall peak, for nothing else in the series could be introduced to actually rival Higuruma if he actually matches, well, the merger. That could surpass Sukuna, but that's a video for another time. In terms of Higuruma Hiromi's current list of challengers and who he's fought up to this point, there is no greater threat, is no greater challenge, is no greater opponent than Ryomen Sukuna. And I assume, this is just an assumption of mine, after Ryomen Sukuna is defeated and the merger is taken care of, whether it be introduced or not introduced at all, I presume we're not going to see much more of the series of Jujutsu Kaisen. I do not believe we are going to get Itadori the next Jujutsu Generations or something like that. I highly doubt we're going to get something like that. So this is Higuruma's point of no return. He has reached that point. But let's rip him out. Let's tear him from this singular point in time and let's drag him, who knows, over the course of what? Simply 2 months as a sorcerer. He's evolved to the point where he has cleared the entire grade 1 tier in terms of his adaptability, reading ability, and technique adaptation. So with just 2 months of being able to do that after being genuinely, unlike Yuji Itadori, a regular individual who just happened to be really, really smart, what could he do if, per se, we gave him 5 years? 5. I don't know how old Higuruma is himself, but he doesn't seem like a man who's super deep into his life. I assume, at best, he's in his mid-30s. Near the prime of his life, if not just barely leaving it. But 5 years of experience in the Jujutsu world, how powerful would Higuruma be, and could he actually reach the level of the mightiest? Is that within his cards? Or ultimately, is it something that even Higuruma Hiromi, the greatest prodigy since Satoru Gojo of the modern day, could not reach? So, for the more basic tier, the more basic level of sorcery has to compete with, you can make a pretty solid argument that he has surpassed almost everyone. In terms of just sheer completion as a sorcerer. He has likely an understanding of simple domain, the superior variation of simple domain and domain amplification after just witnessing it. He has reverse engineered his base curse technique after obtaining his domain expansion instantaneously. He has a deep and clear understanding of his technique, even though he admits there are some vaguenesses that come with judgment. Overall, as a sorcerer in the grade 1 tier, he's pretty much unrivaled. I'm trying to think of a singular grade 1 who has a domain expansion. Unless you wish to argue Hakari, who is unregistered, there's not a single grade 1 to have one. Not Yuji. I mean, Megami? But even then, his domain expansion is very incomplete. Higuruma mastered his barrier technique the moment he got it. Megumi Fushiguro had his barrier technique for months, yet still wasn't able to refine it. And of course, Megumi Fushiguro is alive no more, but simply overall, as a grade 1 sorcerer, Megami has been surpassed. Itadori Yuji before the battle with Sukuna has, I guess before his liberation from Sukuna has obviously been surpassed. Characters such as Nanami, Kusakabe, and who knows how many more. The only individual who could hypothetically strike down Higuruma within the grade 1 tier is the legendary and almighty Meimei with her deadly and devastating bird strike that would tear through Higuruma's justice just like that. But outside of that unbelievable and undeniable apex ability that even the king of curses, the beast and sorcerer of 1,000 1,000 more years, or even the mighty big brain boy, Kenjaku, and even the mightiest source of the modern day, Satoru Gojo, all of which would avoid the almighty bird strike, even Higuruma at his peak potential would fall beneath that. So the grade 1 tier is in fact quite clear. There are still characters who at current should devastate Higuruma. I believe Maki or Toji would be able to hand Higuruma his hammer, and also his hands, and his arms, maybe his leg, and his left big toe in particular. I think they could hand it to him. Not only just due to the fact that his domain would not be able to register them due to the nature of Maki and Toji's lack of curse energy to allow them to be targeted within the domain, but also the fact that Toji could literally turn off his technique with a simple poke of the Emerald Spear of Heaven, and Maki would likely perception blitz him. Most likely. Once again, it's very unfortunate to say, but I don't think there's anything, even after Higuruma's month of training, to imply that he has suddenly surpassed Toji and Maki Zenin in terms of overall speed, and he has no defense against the Soul Split Katana and wouldn't even be able to reach his main win condition against them due to their immunity to domain. Obviously, I believe someone like Akari Kinji is actually a very bad matchup for Higuruma, just based on the fact that they are both instantaneous domain merchants. And while you may be able to argue that Hakari would not be able to pursue any sort of violence against Higuruma, it is very hard to convince me that Jackpot Hakari, someone who's capable of going head-to-head with hajimekashimo, and now Uruume, the chef of Sukuna, would be able to be tagged by any executioner's blade that our main man, Higuruma, manages to get on him. Even currently, Itadori Yuji, who may be subjected to a domain diff, considering before the month of training, he was still more than capable of keeping up with Higuruma head-to-head, and only was keeping him around for the fact that he did in fact need his points and need his assistance. It's very easy to argue that even a currently cursed energyless Yuji would dog on Higuruma. But the sad thing is, with Yuji being confirmed to have some curse technique now, current Yuji would only lose his curse technique, if that. And if he did, he would still have his cursed energy. Maybe a little bit more difficult to control, but he would still have his cursed energy. And thusly, he would most likely beat the brakes off of Higuruma, even if the confiscation went through. And unfortunately, Itadori Yuji is not being hit by the Executioner's Blade. It is simply impossible. And of course, you have the second only to Satoru Gojo himself, Yuta Okotsu, who would once again likely hand Higuruma his booty meat. Top that off with Rika hypothetically being spawned outside of the domain rather than inside it, and Higuruma would be shocked as an angry Rika-chan punches straight through the barrier in order to get back to her Pookie, Yuki Bear. Yuki Bear? Yuta Bear. And saves him from the bad man Higuruma. If he could even find Yuta guilty of certain things, and if judgment is kind enough. So sure, unbelievably powerful at the moment. Clears the grade 1 tier, but for the man to go from random civilian to grade 1 tier in 2 months, what could he do? With 10, 12, maybe 24, 36, 48, 60? What could he do with 60 whole months? But I wonder what he could do with 60 whole months. Well, considering his current linear state of growth, it's very likely that he would master every single generic level of curse energy manipulation. I mean anything that is a shared mechanic of the Jujutsu Kaisen world, or a mechanic that is available to everyone, even if it's not a base shared mechanic, such as typically, well, you see Toji and Maki throw a wrench into it, because technically they are not basic candidates. But with that being the case, everything that could be learned by your regular average sorcerer would be available and mastered by Higuruma probably within a month. Remember, this is the same man who witnessed domain amplification once or twice and was like, I see the method to the madness, and was able to instantly replicate it in the most high-stakes battle of his life against the King of Curses. This man would have domain application. He would have symbol domain. He would have perfected his curse energy reinforcement. He would have overall developed a better fighting IQ than the one he currently has. He would be a monster. But the question is twofold. One, how much more could Higuruma evolve? The unfortunate, I was going to say bad, but I'll call it unfortunate thing, but having so much of your potential dug out so quickly, is that you get diminishing returns after a while. And once again, while I mentioned that Higuruma looks like at his best, he's in his early 30s, there's an issue. can't really get much stronger, much faster, much more dangerous. And that leaves him hard to clear the level of the pseudo-deities, and especially the deities themselves. While Higuruma has insane potential and great reaction and durability, once again, that potential only works if there's something to actually build to. And naturally, this leads into conflict with simply the second tier of the strongest, not to talk of the strongest themselves. Now, if I had to ask you, what makes Satoru Gojo broken? Take your time, don't worry, consider it. If your answer was the infinity, you would be correct. If your answer was red, you would be correct. If your answer was blue, you'd be correct. If your answer was purple, you'd be correct. And if your answer was unlimited void, you'd be correct. Heck, even if your answer was his unlimited access to reverse curse technique on an endless, moment-by-moment, second-by-second basis, you would also be correct. And even the six eyes themselves would make Satoru Gojo quite broken. But then, that leads to our other strongest. What makes Ryomen Sukuna so broken? What makes him so almighty, so amazing, so girthy, so perfect? I'll give you a second. If you said the 4 arms, you'd be correct. If you said the 2 mouths, you'd be correct. If you said the fire arrow, you'd be correct. If you say cleaving this mantle, you'd be correct. If you say shrine as a whole, you would be correct. You could argue. No, that's a bad joke. I won't make that joke. There was a joke I was planning to make. But that's the thing. Well, Gojo Satoru and Ryomen Sukuna do have amazing basic abilities. They do have pretty much mastery. At least for Sukuna, he most likely has mastery of every single thing ever. And like 4K. Okay, but to be fair, not 4K. He probably definitely does have some furry images. But furry? Not furry. I don't think the images have hair on them. Fuzzy images. He most certainly has some fuzzy images here or there. But Ryomen Sukuna most certainly would not be anywhere near as powerful nor revered as he was if his technique was something weaker. Say hypothetically, instead of an invisible slot, well, invisible, because the Maharage can see them after adapting, but say you did have someone with the capability to fire an unending, unbelievably dangerous, unbelievably lethal slash composed of cursed energy so thin and fine that one would not be able to perceive it until it is too late. Imagine having that exact same ability, but instead of being used on people you need to send it out towards, you simply touch them and they reduce down to cubes. That is the nature of Ryomen Sukuna's power. For the case of the Limitless, the ability to teleport, the ability to fly, mind manipulation to unlimited void, even the 6 eyes themselves, all of them, every single one of them are very good abilities. Fantastic abilities. And it's why I think ultimately the biggest hurdle that stops Higuruma from ever reaching the same potential as these mightiest is just that. His base technique, while not bad, also isn't necessarily the best in terms of evolution. Once again, like I mentioned, Higuruma could definitely get physically stronger, physically faster, better understanding of domain implication, symbol domain, every generic thing that one could teach Higuruma about anything, of course, insanely so. It would be such a simple yet sweet conundrum that would keep Higuruma from rising too far. Because when you look at Higuruma, right, even if he can get physically stronger, even if he can get physically faster, more durable, to get better understanding of his techniques, all that, the big issue is that deadly sentencing in of itself is just not good enough. It's not. The reason Satoru Gojo is so strong isn't just because of the 6 eyes, and isn't just because he's Satoru Gojo. It's the fact that he has the Limitless, an ability that allows him to fundamentally tear apart, rearrange, and destroy matter on an atomic level. Observe it down to that point and break it down from there automatically. I just don't see anything like that with Higuruma. When you look at someone like Ryomen Sukuna, the king, this overwhelming power and his dominance doesn't just come from the fact that he had 4 arms and 2 extra mouths for show, is that he could use his curse technique and whatever curse tools he had more efficiently. meaning he was more dangerous. Ultimately, the reason Teen Gojo awakened and got so much stronger so quickly is because there was a whole other side of his technique to awaken. A studied side, a side with history, a side with background, a side with understanding that could go into it. Same thing, well, not the same thing with Sukuna, but ultimately there's likely some sort of understanding that Sukuna has with his technique that maybe transcends our typical understanding of techniques and how he uses it. But still, ultimately the technique in of itself is still very, very powerful, Cleave and Dismantle. Deadly Sentencing simply is not that. Where Infinity and Cleave and Dismantle, or Shrine, both have all-around utility. With the Infinity / the Limitless, obviously bearing the Infinity, the I want to say the only reason Gojo's relevant cross-verse, but once again, with that being the case, I think it's reasonable to assume a little something something. And that little something something is that something that allows you to tear apart space down to the molecular level or the atomic level is much better than anything a little judge can get you. Drastically so. No matter how nice whatever the judge is offering may sound. That's the main difference. When you look at something like Deadly Sentencing, it's very, very, very good at what it does, when it does, if it's allowed to do what it do, how it do it, when it do it. We unfortunately just haven't seen certain things with Deadly Sentencing. We just have not yet. One of the main things we haven't seen yet. If you have a domain expansion, does the activation of another barrier technique in of itself count as violence and is thus banned, or is it not? Unfortunately, the only people we've seen Higuruma use domain expansion on are people without domains, such as Itadori Yuji. Like what? 20 people off screen, and that's it. Like a Sukuna who likely still has brain damage and or wanted to be guilty so he could see the Executioner Sword. We don't know how barrier techniques interact with Higuruma, and sure, you could definitely argue his barrier is good, but not only is it not described as one of the fastest, one of the strongest, or anything like that, but also, we just haven't seen it. And there are quite a number of characters who have confirmed domain expansions. We could enter a counter domain or a domain tug of war with Higuruma. And another thing about reaching the point of the mightiest, just in general, Deadly Sentencing is cool and all, but like, as nice as this hammer is, that's all you get, for the most part, without domain merchanting, or rolling for a good pull, rolling for something decent when it comes to offensive or defensive power. We see that Higuruma is able to manipulate the size of the hammer freely of actually sentencing everybody, which is very, very good. It's good that he can change the hammer size and do this and do that and do this and do that. But I'm sorry, red is going to be infinitely better than anything that hammer could ever do. Blue is going to be infinitely better than anything that hammer could ever do. Cleave, Dismantle, the Malevolent Shrine, Unlimited, all of those are going to be inherently better than whatever Higuruma will ever be able to muster up with Deadly Sentencing, because the technique simply doesn't go that far. It doesn't seem to have anything. And unlike something like Cleave and Dismantle, which we very explicitly see evolve live before our very eyes, to go from a technique that has a certain limit, a certain ideology having to specifically target somebody, and seeing it evolve drastically, unfortunately the base nature of Deadly Sentencing doesn't seem to allow any direct room for expansion. Even if Higuruma gets a full knowledge of how the curse technique works and all that beautiful stuff, we don't know how it could evolve beyond in a certain way. And its base properties of themselves do not change the stronger Higuruma gets. Fueling RCT into Deadly Sentencing will not make him any stronger. I'm not even sure how that would work. If anything, that would put Higuruma on trial. In comparison to where RCT could take a lot of other techniques up to an even higher level, RCT may actually make Higuruma's technique just blatantly worse if he were to ever unlock that. And with that being the case, I just don't see him being able to reach the level of those pinnacles. Because once again, Gojo Satoru is so powerful because the Limitless and the Six Eyes are really, really good. Ryo and Sukuna is so powerful because Shrine itself and the Flame Arrow and for a limited time the 10 Shadows were really, really good. They in themselves facilitated a powerful sorcerer. It's just that their base sorcerer who was wielding them also happened to be really, really good at the sorcerer thing, which Sukuna and Gojo were. But no matter how good Higuruma gets at the base sorcerer thing, remember, his strongest attack is this. Well, not literally this, but it's just a blade. Unless Higuruma suddenly becomes the fastest character in the series, he's not going to be able to consistently tag somebody with this. And sure, while it's effective in this very specific scenario against Sukuna for the fact that it is only lethal to the person who's charged, the blade's not even a guarantee. The only reason that purple isn't a guarantee in a fight with Satoru Gojo is because Satoru Gojo doesn't perform optimally. And he doesn't just abuse the fact that 9 out of 10 times you simply couldn't hit him if you wanted to charge a purple in your face. The reason that Cleave and Dismantle is so powerful individually is the fact that Sukuna has access to that at any time. The only time he doesn't have access to it is right post a domain. But luckily enough, with his level of aptitude, he even has it after that. With like 5 seconds of quickly healing his brain for upwards of possibly 5 times if Gojo Satoru is any indication. And even after that, hypothetically, considering that would be him opening domain. But once again, Dismantle, boom, an instantaneous, easy slash that flies and is imperceptible to anyone except for Maharaga, a creature who very specifically adapted to the phenomena. Let's take a look at we just talked about Dismantle. Cleave, an ability that is so deadly and potent because the moment Sukuna lays a paw on you, that's it. You're being cleaved apart. If Higuruma does not have you with the DP, you now just have to fight Higuruma without your curse technique. And sure, he can definitely get his stats to the point where that's basically a GG for most. Maybe. Because remember, Mr. Prodigy Man himself was struggling with a no cursed energy Yuji. No cursed energy Yuji. And don't get me wrong, it's very easy to believe that Yuji has gotten drastically stronger in comparison to his beginning of series self in terms of his natural superhuman base on top of whatever cursed energy reinforcement, but still, that's not all the best. And once again, that's only against somebody who he can actually get guilty with. And of course, it's Higuruma, right? He'd be able to get pretty much anybody on some sort of charge just because he's that smart as a lawyer. But what he gets access to isn't as clean-cut a win con as anything that Gojo or Sukuna have access to. Arguably, it's not even as clear-cut a win con as anything that Yuki Sakumo has access to, that Geto Suguru has access to, that Kenjaku has access to, that Yuta has access to, that Maki has access to, that Toji has access to. Every single one of the other people who stand at the pinnacle, despite a lack of talent or an excess of talent relative to Higuruma Hiromi, they have abilities that are consistently on them at all times. The only person who kind of doesn't fit that criteria is Yuta because he needs to slide a ring on. But once again, once he slides the ring on, he is guaranteed a fully manifested Rika. He is guaranteed the copy abilities. He is guaranteed a consistent and steady refill of his cursed energy. Higuruma domain rolls, he could get a charge like jaywalking, and at best, he's taking away your curse technique. And if you're just good enough, which we don't know, once again, that's the poor thing about Higuruma running into so many randoms that we don't get any information on, we don't know. Sure, most people lose control of their cursed energy when their technique is taken away, but what if he actually ran into someone with any sort of decent skills? I don't know, what if he ran into Kashimo? You think Kashimo's gonna suffer? Because, oh no, you took away his cursed technique? No. The man barely uses the darn thing. And he, most, like 9 out of 10 times, wouldn't even use it in character. Higuruma would be worthless against someone like Kashimo. Against someone like Akari Kinji, say hypothetically he can't just domain back. If he's in jackpot and Higuruma gets him on something, he confiscates his curse technique. Unfortunately, if confiscation of the curse technique is the real basis, all Hikari would lose is the access to the doors and like the balls. That's about it. He'd still be able to have the unlimited cursed energy because that's a byproduct of his technique. It's not an active part of it. Though admittedly you could make arguments about that. But still, look at someone like Itadori Yuji. Currently, since he now has a technique that could be confiscated, he'd still beat the brakes off of Higuruma just because he has better base stats and a highly liar, well, maybe Higuruma once again could reach Itadori Yuji levels with just basic cursed energy reinforcement, but I don't think so. Yuji seems to have just a much higher base to start from, and once again, insane potential of his own that very much leans into the physical stat category. Same thing with Maki and Toji, same thing with Yuta Okotsu, all that. And topped it off with their guaranteed abilities. Punching and hitting with a hammer, real good. If you were to take this and swing it at my head, my head would burst like a balloon. It would pop Wide open, just like that, But in a world like Jujutsu Kaisen, in a world where the ones that Higuruma is being compared to in terms of raw potential are literal monsters, or deities, or creatures of such insane power and notable variety, that their basic attacks are 9 out of 10 times lethal to anyone who's just them, I'm sorry, I don't really see Higuruma catching that. I don't see Higuruma's technique ever reaching the level of Cleave or Dismantle in terms of utility, ease of access, and common access to that ease of access. I don't see it reaching the levels of blue, purple, red, and even though purple is a harder technique to access, it's something that's there. Unlimited Void and Malevolent Shrine will always be better domains than Deadly Sentencing. Wanna know why? Because Higuruma is the only one out of those three with his domain that has to go through something to immediately get to doing something lethal to you. The moment Gojo Satoru opens his domain, you are 9 out of 10 times going to lose unless you open yours at literally the exact same second. 9 out of 10 times, unless you are Ryomen Sukuna himself or Gojo Satoru. The moment Ryomen Sukuna opens his domain, you've most likely already lost it and been cleaved into numerous pieces. The moment Higuruma Hiromi opens his domain, no matter how much stronger he gets, no matter how much of a better fundamental understanding of Jujutsu he gets, no matter all that, there's still a very high likelihood that he doesn't get the death penalty. He doesn't get the Executioner's Blade. And even if he does, he still needs to hit you. Unfortunately, that's just not good enough. It's great. It's solid. In fact, on a team front, I'd say Higuruma is one of the best you can have because he can drastically debuff your opponent. But outside of that, with a technique that is so reliant on external factors, so reliant on a gotcha roll, so reliant on so many other things, even if Higuruma Hiromi was given 20 years to train, and the fountain of eternal youth, meaning he would never age beyond his prime, I think it's more than reasonable to assume that he could never actually reach the levels of the strongest, the deities, and even some of the mightiest, not to talk of the strongest themselves, just due to the limitations of his very cursed technique. However, that's what I think. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys think I'm wrong? Do you guys think I'm right? Do you think somewhere in between? Let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave the Judge of Fate in the comment section down below. Other than thank you so much for watching. Please don't you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month. Get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks will include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays, Red Wolf 4765, Greyhound, and Akid's Void. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Victor, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, Demix LND, and Igneal. And I'd like to give a chunky thank you to our $7 member, Autumn's Morning Lazo. And I'd like to give another chunka thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchio, Joaquin, Idemokai, and China Doll 09. I'd like to give a tractor thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give another giga gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.